Is dry brining really dry brining? And what happens if you do it for a whole week? I don't know. We're about to find that out. We're going to channel our inner Guga right here on Brisket Medic. The theory of dry brining is that you add salt without any excess moisture. Now, many people think that this is considered a speed cure, but the problem with that is the science of homeostasis, osmosis, and things like that don't allow it to be a speed cure, depending on the amount of salt and curing agents that you would use. So a dry cure or a speed cure without adding any moisture, that dry cure, that would entail that you added more salt, sugar, and other curing agents than the content of the moisture of the object. Because of homeostasis and osmosis, the way things move throughout permeable membranes, which the meat, the proteins, the molecules, and things like that, where salt goes, water follows. And that's why when you salt some meat, moisture rises to the top. But when you only put a little bit on there, and by a little bit I mean that you don't actually put the meat into a bucket full of salt and completely cover it, you can put a good amount of salt on a piece of meat without curing it. And that's because there's not as much salt as there is moisture inside the meat. And so that salt on the outside of the meat will draw moisture up, and then when the salt dissolves into that moisture, it actually soaks back into the meat, because like everything else in the world, it likes to be at an average, a happy average. So the salinity of the moisture outside the meat really wants to be the same as the salinity of the moisture inside the meat, and the moisture levels want to average out the same. So I had an idea. I know salt brining by adding salt to a steak an hour or so prior to cooking it really does a good thing to the steak. It adds a lot of flavor. It concentrates the beef flavor, it adds salt to it, and it just overall tastes very nice. So I wondered if I could do that for a week, but I didn't want to dry age it, and I didn't want to cure it by adding so much salt to protect it. So what I did was I covered this steak with Uncle Steve's Lucky Shake, and then I vacuum sealed it for 1 week. Now, you can see there's a little bit of moisture on the outside of the steak. It did draw some out, but what that did was replace some of the content of the moisture inside the steak with salt and other agents that are inside that shake. This has been in the fridge for a week. I'm going to fire up the Weber. I'm going to open this up. If it passes the smell test, we're going to go ahead and cook it and try it and see how it tastes. Now, I cooked a couple of these before. This is actually from the same roast, and honestly, this isn't great quality beef. There wasn't a whole lot of flavor to it, but it was really cheap and on sale, so I bought it. And I'm hoping this takes this super cheap cut of beef and ups it a level. So let's go ahead and cut it open and see if it passes the sniff test. If this thing smells sour, we just aren't going to eat it. I've heard of people wet aging and it getting sour, but generally they aren't using any salt products or anything like that. And I hate to say it, hate to sound this way, but they were probably a little bit dirty in the way that they did it, and so that bacteria was there when they vacuum sealed it. But let's go ahead and take a sniff. That smells amazing. All right, so it's good. I'm going to light up the Weber. I'm going to sear this off a little bit on each side, and then set it to the side until this meets the temperature for medium rare, and then we'll cut it up and we'll taste it. So come on, let's channel that inner Guga, redneck Guga, if you will. Like the shirt? Let's do it. And in no time, this steak is completely finished. And let's see if my theory on dry brining in a vacuum sealed bag for a week is worth it. I can already tell you it's finished very nicely. Very tender. Let's see how she tastes. It's not as salty as I thought it would be, but it's really good. I would probably crack some salt and pepper over this as I ate, or maybe a herb garlic butter, but I didn't add any of that because I wanted to be pretty fair to see how well it was. But I'll tell you this much, it was better than the one that I sous vide. And again, it's the quality of these steaks are not great, and that's why they don't have a whole lot of flavor. They're tender, they're juicy, they're very juicy. I mean, I can feel it running down my fingers. It's juicy, and this has more beef flavor than the last one that I cooked. But for a cheap steak, this is very good. I'll have to try this with a really good steak and go all out on it. You know, the herb butter, the salt and pepper after we finish. You know, the little salt bay finish. But that's part of it right here. Truth teller, most crust. That's really good. In this video, I hope that I discerned or explained to help you discern the difference between quick cure, curing at all, and dry brining. And this worked out. So remember, if you do it cleanly, if you don't oversaturate the meat with salt or sugar, you're not really curing it. You are dry brining if you vacuum seal it. So hope you give it a try. Drink more water. Make sure if you haven't liked or subscribed or commented down below, you do that now. I love you guys.